Right. Hold. Left. Forward.
God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen. Stand there victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the
Let's go.
Enfants de la patrie, et le jour de gloire est arrivé. Sauve-nous de la tyrannie, étendard sanglant élevé, étendard sanglant élevé.
The airstrip at Port Vila in the southwest Pacific was built during the last World War. There's still only one runway, but there are at least two of everything else. Two national airlines, one British, one French, two customs services, two immigration services, two quarantine officers. The jets, tactfully scheduled, arrive separately. Today it's the French plane's turn. Aboard was Mademoiselle Dominique Viard from Paris, a French reporter for ORTF, the French National Television Service. This is a joint ORTF-BBC film report on these Pacific islands, where everything comes in Anglo-French pairs. So French immigration officers deal with the French passengers from the French flight, while British immigration officers take a back seat. Such is the innocent visitor's first introduction to the condominium, also known less politely as the Pandominium of the New Hebrides.
With all the French visitors out of the way, it's the turn of the British travellers to fly in. So, the airport fixtures and fittings must be changed around. Now, the French take a back seat, while the British take over the building. Among the passengers who've arrived is my colleague from London, the BBC reporter Jim Douglas Henry. Being British, he has flown in, on the western route via Fiji, once a British colony, now a dominion.
Dominique Viard, being French, came on the eastern route via New Caledonia, still a French territory. If you're British or French, there's an obvious choice of stamp in your passport. But if you're neither, you must opt here for the protection of one government or the other. But if you don't care for either, how do you choose?
Well, then you join the queue, which is the shortest, I would take it, sir, unless you had any particular preference.
Why is your queue so much longer than theirs in that case?
Well, this plane has come from Fiji with connections from London and Australia.
I see.
The UTA flight comes from Noumea with connections from Paris.
It's slightly Alice in Blunderland, isn't it?
It's unusual.
Thank you very much. It's been suggested that if London and Paris appointed a governor and a governess instead of two males to head their administrations, progress might overtake this wonderland. For while most French and Englishmen would insist on having the last word, both would agree that ladies come first.
Before I came, being a Parisian, I had preconceived ideas about the New Hebrides. To me, it was the last paradise with beautiful empty beaches, coconut trees, sand, laziness. And indeed, after reading books, I expected to discover the last cannibals in the world living in the middle of the bush. In fact, things are very different. Looking at the British people, I soon discovered that they were not like British people back in England. And I feel the same about the French crowd. Indeed, in addition to that, the Europeans in the condominium are different from each other. Things appear to be strange, even weird, and bizarre. Looking at the way the ladies do their shopping, you might think that there are no shops here at all. In fact, there are even supermarkets. But the New Hebrideans don't use them and carry on in their very own way, indifferent to European customs. There are 80,000 New Hebrideans and only 5,000 Europeans. The modern way of life brought here by the French and the British has left these people just as they were before. Not even machines or machineries have produced much more than a shrug of the shoulders. I myself can't blame the islanders for leaving us well alone. The only place where there is any contact at all is in the towns. There are only two, not many considering that these two towns serve some 80 islands. The local people speak different languages in every village, hundreds of them. At least the European manage with only two. If the girls didn't come to work for the Europeans at the hotel, you get the feeling that the different races would never meet at all. As it is, they must be the only chambermaids in the world who actually paddle themselves to work. All the Europeans have to decide whether they're French or British, even if they're really German or American. Either way, they try to imagine they are at the Club Mediterranean, or perhaps at Butlins, depending which they're used to. Here, on the hotel golf course, the French and British do actually mix. And if you think that's not strange, you've no idea what lengths the two nationalities go to in order to stay different from each other. They even run this condominium with two governments, which face each other proudly across a miniature version of the English Channel. The French government has modern offices with Paris-trained civil servants working in air-conditioned luxury. The whole atmosphere is in complete contrast to the British. Like the French, the British have been running colonies for years, but they still manage everything from a wooden hut. At least in public, the two governments show a united front. I talked to both, but I might just as well have stuck to one.
Well, the condominium of the New Hebrides is a territory which is administered jointly by France and by Britain.
Chacune des deux puissances.
Each of the two powers keep their sovereignty over their own nationals.
There are therefore two national administrations here, and the two national administrations are helped by what we term joint services. Joint services such as the posts, public works, customs, and so forth.
We have three sorts of tribunals, one for the French, one for the British, and a special sort for the condominium.
What is the job of a resident commissioner, therefore?
The resident commissioner has two functions, really.
Each resident commissioner looks after his own government. Jointly, the two of them are in charge of the condominium.
The resident commissioners themselves
Hold a working meeting
perhaps once a month
to discuss
matters.
in the condominium.
Enfants de la patrie, et les jours de gloire éternelle.
I know it's hard to believe, but what all this means is that everything here is done twice, either together, or one after the other, or the other way round, but always twice.
To reign over us, God save the Queen.
You only have to try and post a parcel to find out what it is really like. The post office here is like no other post office in the world. Thank God. Votre envoyer ça recommandé en France. Je remplisse reçu. My parcel weighed 425 grams. And as all parcels are worked out in fractions of 20 grams, that gave me 21 times 20 grams. Now, they charge 45 centimes gold for every fraction. And if you think gold makes the whole thing even more complicated, don't worry. They convert the gold into New Hebridean francs. 1 gold franc is worth 29 New Hebridean francs. And if you can, what you do is multiply 45 centimes by 21, because that's how many fractions there were in the parcel. That makes 10 francs 15, and then you add on the Franco-British charge, which also works out in fractions, and turns out to be a 70 centimes gold. Now, when you add that up, you get 294 francs 35 centimes, or, if you prefer it another way, and who wouldn't, you get $2.95 in Australian money.
2,94,35. $2.95.
So, not only do they work everything out in a currency which doesn't exist anymore, gold francs that is, but you still have 2 different currencies which you can pay with. Australian dollars if you're British, and New Hebridean francs if you're French. Luckily, you get 100 francs for $1. But still, I am not convinced. My parcel never arrived.
How many 1 franc should you have, Jack?
If you work in the post office, you have another problem. They can't sell the stamps of 2 different governments at the same time. So they take it in turns. After they've been selling British stamps for a bit, they change over and sell French ones. The British stamps that haven't been sold are now useless. So they count up the value of them, write it down carefully in a book, and then burn them. The stamps, not the books. Logical? Well, you've got to remember that they have to work out the value of the stamps in gold first, then convert that to francs or dollars, depending on which postmaster is doing the burning, and then calculate how many weren't sold so that they know exactly how many were actually issued. At least, I think that's what they do. Anyway, after a little while, they do it all over again, only this time they burn the French stamps instead.
God save our precious will, long live our noble King. God save.
You can imagine that cooperation between the 2 governments needs more than just a sense of humor. The 2 hospitals are staffed independently, and both can treat anyone for anything. And if you think having 2 hospitals is a waste of money, you have to admit that the doctors seem to manage very well. And there's always a second opinion just down the road.
Oui, oui. Je crois qu'il faut se contenter de thérapeutique chimique et puis terminer. Alors. Oui, Jean-Pierre, vous avez raison. Eh? What do you think,
Yes,
Patrice?
do you see often some cases so late, neoplasia?
Probably not as late as this, although I have seen it in the past. But the main problem is the large number of cases of cancer, particularly lymphoma, that we're seeing amongst children.
In fact, what happens is that at the British hospitals they deal with certain special diseases that they and the French think the British can treat best. The others get French treatment. So the 2 lots of doctors do help each other and provide the nearest thing possible to a national health service. In this case, 2 heads work out better than 1. The worst problem of all must be the law. I mean, both laws. Every day, the French and British police have to get together. It's their job to make sure that everyone obeys one law or the other.
Well, I don't think that this lady is a genuine tourist. I think we ought to have some more inquiries made.
I think she's only a tourist, but she went to go probably to Mr. Mitchell in order to purchase for land. I don't know exactly.
Une autre chose, Jack. Jouant un projet pour le resident commissioner.
Oui.
Vous êtes d'accord?
D'accord. Je pense. I think we have to present both the same paper, the same letter to our resident commissioners,
Yes.
in order to obtain their agreement.
But there are not just 2 legal systems. There are 3. 1 French, 1 British, and 1 New Hebridean. As I said, strange, weird and bizarre. Even a routine radar trap needs both British and French police to plan it. It's not that it's hard to set up the radar. It's a problem of who arrests who. Only the British can arrest the British, only the French the French. But either or both can arrest the poor New Hebrideans. Most of them are taxi drivers, and they're always rushing to get more money.
À combien vous l'avez chronométré celui-là? 82 km/h. 82 km/h. Bonjour monsieur, vous avez dépassé le 50, hein. Vous avez chronométré à 82 km de vitesse, c'est exact?
Very well done. Very well done. Good morning, madam.
Morning, sir.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Gosh.
You are traveling too fast.
Yes.
So you are traveling on 65 kilometers.
Yes.
Favon Giuseppe, vous êtes italien?
Oui.
Optant français?
Comment?
Vous êtes optant français
Ah,
sous
oui.
la loi française?
Oui.
Bon, alors vous avez vu l'infraction que vous avez commise, hein? Hein,
Oui,
vous
mais
doublez en...
il a arrêté avant.
Mais vous doublez en plein dans un virage où la vitesse est limitée, monsieur. Écoutez, c'est quand même pas raisonnable. Vous êtes un danger quand même. Pour vous-même et pour les autres, hein. C'est une infraction qui est grave.
Excuse me, officer. The French policeman and not you has just dealt with the Italian driver. Can you tell me why?
An alien entering the territory, either as a visitor or in this case to work, is given 1 month in which to opt to come under the law of one side or the other. Having so opted, he cannot change. In this particular case, the Italian had opted French, and therefore he's dealt by my colleague.
Either French or British. There's no other choice.
Oh, either French or British. No, we have no other governments.
Once they've made a charge, it's even more complicated. A citizen can be tried in a French court if he is French, or a British court if he is British. There's also a joint court, which should be administered by a neutral, appointed by the King of Spain. There hasn't actually been a King of Spain for a long time, which makes it difficult for him to appoint anybody. So, the British and French judges run the local people's court in turn. If the judges do manage to send you to prison, it isn't as bad as all that. The local people call the British and French jails government hotels. They are happy to go to prison. They get good food and comfortable beds. The French prison even offers wine with the food. In tropical islands, like the New Hebrides, you hardly expect to find traffic jams. So it's not surprising that the French and British sometimes find a situation which they cannot manage to sort out in a friendly way. They do, after all, have different personalities and different sides of the road.
Non, non, faut pas vous amuser comme ça. Hein. Moi, je veux voir la milice. Hein. Non, 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 vous dégagez et tout. Hein. Moi, je veux voir la milice. Non, 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 non. Je ne veux pas savoir. Je ne veux pas écouter, c'est tout. Je suis à droite et c'est un point, c'est tout. Vous, vous êtes à gauche, vous êtes dans votre tort et c'est tout.
Look, my steering wheel's on this side of the car.
Je veux rien entendre, je veux rien entendre. English, spoken et tout. Hein, moi, je parle pas anglais, hein. Alors c'est tout, hein. Pas que ça à faire, moi.
The schools are a good example of different traditions. The British secondary school is fee-paying and organized to meet the special needs of the New Hebrides. They do teach French, but the teacher isn't a Frenchman, and yet there are lots of them around, and so the pupils are forced to learn their French with a Scots accent.
Right, now, I'd like you to start writing these in pencil.
The French school is a beautiful modern lycée built exactly on French lines, and the teaching, too, is in the traditional French way. Here, there are no fees. But since they find the history of France, Napoleon and the guillotine irrelevant to the New Hebrides, there are few native pupils. The European students learn English, of course, but naturally their teacher is not English.
3, 4, 5. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I let it go again. Why did you let it go? Because it bit my finger so. Which finger did it bite? The little finger on the right.
This is Radio Vila, the New Hebrides broadcasting service, beginning morning transmission.
You even get a different version of the news, depending on which of the 3 communities you belong to. Radio Vila puts out its news every day in 3 languages, and the news is quite different, depending on which language you understand. Not that it matters much, because the transmitter is so bad that you can best hear it 200 miles south of the New Hebrides.
Amateurs du jeu de boules, rendez-vous donc à dimanche. Voilà, nos informations sont terminées. Maintenant, je cède la parole à John McNeil pour les informations en anglais.
You're listening to Radio Vila, the voice of the New Hebrides. And here now is the news. The British Resident Commissioner has issued a warning to all touring officers to take particular care when making beach landings in small boats. This warning follows the drowning in June in the Eastern Solomons of an agricultural officer. The officer, who was wearing boots, was tipped into the sea while trying to land in rough seas from an aluminium dinghy. I have one service message today. It's from the British District Agent at Lakatoro, and the message is for Jack of Labongwe, Malakula. The message says, please start walking down to the coast now. The boat Ida will arrive at Wintua in 2 days' time to take you to Lakatoro to serve your prison sentence. Please take your bush knife and enough food for the journey. And that ends the news in English from Radio Vila. In a moment, the news in Pidgin from Joe Bomokalo.
British Western Commissioner bin talan long all people, wetem over the office of long government will stop along all island, so you must look out good time while you go so long all small boat wetem lanis. Mr. Allen Italian Olsem from where in a long time he passed no more. He got one white man where me, one big fellow officer belong over along Solomon Island, and me dead time me go long ashore.
In fact, the important news items are the same, but certainly not the sporting news. While the French play their own games and report the results, the British stick religiously to the mysteries of cricket, with the team of all assuming its usual importance. In true colonial tradition, the British have taught the New Hebrideans how to play cricket, something the French have never been able to master, but then they haven't tried.
Can we have the ball?
I thought the least I could do was to ask them what the rules are, but when they told me, the only thing I really understood was why the French have never bothered to play it.
If he hits the ball past this boundary here, which is marked by the stakes around the outside, that's 4 runs. If he hits over that, it is 6 runs, or you might like to talk of them as points. But if it isn't hit that far, then it becomes a matter of the batsman running between the wickets. And when they run from one end of the wicket to the other, both batsmen, that is counted as 1 run or point.
I've seen the batsmen sort of running to each other. What's the rule for that?
They don't run to each other, they run past each other. They run to the other end of the wicket.
Why for?
To make a run. This is the object of the batting team is to score runs.
Sport. And in Saturday's cricket match, Malay Village beat British Office by 2 wickets. British Office made 142 with top score from Bob Hindle, 56. Kalawak took 5 wickets for 59.
Oh, number 1. Will I win this time? Whoever is champion, Malay got him this time.
The French play pétanque, and by calling it boule, the British show that they know as little about that as the French do about cricket. The fact that the British have never heard of pétanque and the French don't want to know about cricket is typical of the New Hebrides. The mystery is how two communities which have so little to do with each other can manage to run the country with two governments. The fact remains that it does seem to work in its own extraordinary way. Perhaps the reason is the place itself. There is still plenty of room for the people of all three nationalities to enjoy their own lifestyles the way they want to. The local people are content to lead their traditional life, not affected by the two governments. And even the Europeans find it hard to have a serious argument in a paradise like this. The sun and the sea make Anglo-French differences irrelevant, and certainly more amusing than annoying.
Thank you very much. At first sight, these islands contain all the ingredients of a successful tourist trap: sea, sun, sand, and service with a smile, plus the added attractions of the British and French ways of life, wildly different, bravely trying to maintain a united colonial front for the sake of the entente tropicale they concocted as a local administration. But if you leave the tourist track and look behind the Anglo-French facade, you find all the elements of tragedy as well as comedy in its colonial conceits. There may soon be more banks in Vila than New Hebrideans with bank accounts, since these islands, where there's no tax on income, started to boom as a tax haven. Because British law is more flexible than French, most of the tax avoiders will form companies under the British administration, which hopes to offset in registration fees 20% of the $2 million a year it costs to run. Some of the smarter operators, using legitimate British company services like these, might make the best of both worlds by opting personally for French protection, thus putting themselves beyond the reach of British policemen, while their British companies would be safe from inquisitive gendarmes. Millions have been made this way, though not by the New Hebrideans. The British may be good at accountancy, but it's the French who own the land, 31% of it. Monsieur Elzière is local boss of SFNH, a French government-controlled company and the largest single landowner with 500,000 acres. Private French planters and the French state own another 500,000 acres. Most of this land, where New Hebrideans provide a cheap labor force, is developed, accessible country on the coast, as opposed to their uncleared tribal territory. These white-owned plantations traditionally produced copra, the source of coconut oil. Since the bottom fell out of that market, the French have turned to ranching. The plan is to raise beef cattle, but more importantly to increase the French claim in the New Hebrides, where independence might seem like the thin end of a dangerous wedge, since these islands aren't far from the French atomic testing grounds near Tahiti, and very close to French New Caledonia, one of the biggest nickel mines in the world. The British, with only 4% of the land in the New Hebrides, nurture their tax haven and a pious but unspoken hope that the French may one day come to terms with independence for the New Hebrideans, who have at present no say in their own affairs, in the country or in the towns.
At the moment, I think
Most New Hebrideans live in villages. Many have never seen Port Vila or the other big town of Santo with its native slum quarters. The choice between slum and village life is a simple matter of walking. But unless they leave these islands altogether, it's difficult for New Hebrideans to see themselves in relation to the rest of the modern world, or to compare other people's living standards with their own.
I think they're terrible. The condition is bad, very bad and dirty places, and then there's no proper water supply, there's no toilet system, there's no lighting system, so it's really bad.
Now, you think this housing is terrible, and I agree with you, I think this housing is terrible, but what about the people who live here? What do they think of it?
I think they don't realize that it is terrible. They think it's all right, mainly because I don't think they've seen an alternative. They think that all European must always have a better house, and New Hebrideans have bad house.
Why do they think that?
Because they haven't really seen maybe a good community where people are equal.
The only New Hebrideans with an official voice serve on a showcase body without power, the Advisory Council to the resident commissioners. But those who see a need for change may join the unofficial National Party, led by Walter Leaney, an Anglican priest with a plan for his people.
Well, I think that we'll have to have members of the National Party in the Advisory Council, and this is what we're working for. And we are sure that every New Hebridean member that would be on the Advisory Council when the next election comes would be members of the National Party.
What do you think is going to happen if soon New Hebrideans still have no power?
I think violence.
What sort of violence?
Fight. I think that New Hebrideans will start attacking people, outsiders.
With what?
Hands, stones, I think. Maybe not many at one time, but I think that 2 or 3 or maybe 10 people could easily be killed just because of this.
Now, you're a priest. Do you think that's a good idea?
No, I don't think it is a good idea, but I think that for freedom, if another side doesn't see that he should give freedom, then maybe that act of violence is justified.
Here, violence goes back to the first brutal impact of the white man, to the social violence of white master, black servant, the simple violence of gunpowder and wooden spears, the cultural violence of well-meaning missionaries. Today, after church is over in the town, the activists of the National Party, Anglican mission boys who grew up to become priests, go out to preach the gospel of nationhood and independence in the villages. There is a poetic justice in this turn of events, for it was to protect the white men, especially the missionaries, that the condominium was formed. There was a reason. When the first white missionaries arrived unarmed, the islanders killed them on the beach where they landed. But that was a long time ago. It's many years since any white man needed protection from New Hebrideans. Rather the reverse. It's the New Hebridean who needs protection and encouragement to fight for his rights and his land in the modern world.
We try and start off by explaining what politics is all about. Of course, we could go straight in and talk about the National Party, but then they wouldn't know what a party is. They wouldn't know what nationalism is. Because, well, for one thing, there's no such word in English. We have to use the English word all the time. But we talk about the aims of the party, which generally, of course, talk about social, economic and political problems. But in each of these categories, we try and give an example from the local scene so that, it relates to them.
Pandominium Kavman also we irulum Nurbedis, mo irulum yemiol black man, mo irulum every man on Nurbedis where you black or you sinua or you half caste or whatever. Something also political now, if I start making.
From the social point of view, we try and talk about traditionalism and our custom ways and how good this is to keep sort of people together, to keep an identity. And from the economic point of view, we try and give them some examples of things they can do, like at present, the price of copra is at its worst. And we try and tell them that why don't you, take up pig farming or poultry or produce first-class copra, because they've always been producing second-class copra. And then we explain to them about politics. It's a very difficult concept in itself, and we just don't know how to go about it, so we talk about government. So inevitably, politics is synonymous with government. And then with that, we talk about independence. Then we will say that independence can't come to them if they're just going to sit around and run to the district agent every time they've got a land problem. That's not independence. That's the kind of thinking we're trying to instill in them. How to think, rather than tell them what to think.
This British homestead with 5,000 acres of plantations stocked with cattle is for sale at £500,000. In the good days of copra, this plantation yielded £20,000 a year. and life is still bearable by any standards.
He had a big bandage on his head with blood all over it and his arm.
The owner, Hamlin Harris, a one-time cabinet maker and French polisher, fled from militant unionism in Australia in 1925. Today, he's the father of 4 grown-up sons, and he's going to retire if he can sell up. His and his family's attitude to New Hebrideans reflect those of the established plantocracy, and he's more liberal than most.
My greatest disappointment probably is in the native peoples. One could never depend on them. They are essentially undependable people.
You're supposed to be painting the ruddy windows, not that damn frame. Paint a window there.
They have no conscience about leaving somebody who has been good to them, who's done well for them over the years. If somebody comes along and offers them 2 bob a day more, well, they like a change. You can be training him to do something, he's showing great progress, and then suddenly he just moves off to work for somebody else, which is disheartening. They're very much like our abos in Australia that want to go walkabout. They get tired of the one situation and they feel that they'd like to go and do something else. I think this is basically the reason why they're undependable.
What sort of a life do you think you'd have under an autonomous regime here? I mean, if this curious condominium situation,
Yes.
the 2 national governments
Yes.
were replaced by a New Hebridean government, do you think it would materially alter your situation?
Oh, I'm sure it would.
Would you?
Yes, yes. I wouldn't want to be here.
Me too. I wouldn't want to be here under autonomy. No.
Can you give me any idea why?
Well, just from the little bits of gossip that one picks up around the town, and the attitude of some, a minority, admittedly a minority of the natives, that they think that autonomy means that they take over everything that belongs to the white man. If autonomy comes, I'm going to live in so-and-so's house. I'm going to have so-and-so's job. The white man is finished. This is a feeling that is stirring amongst the local people.
And you believe that's what would happen?
Oh, I'm quite concerned about that. At the present stage, this is why I say we need more education and a great deal more education before the people will be ready for autonomy.
I think it'll take
If they have
centuries.
autonomy in 5 years' time, we'll go back to tribal warfare, as they've done in other parts of the world.
These jungle drummers aren't working up to a raid on the white plantations or the ritual murder of other tribesmen. They're getting in the mood for a village dance tonight. But like many New Hebrideans, they also want their land back. Here at Muru village, they've done something to get it. Muru is the headquarters of a new movement called Nagri Amel, which means peace and law. Nagri Amel is all about land and who owns it. Muru is an hour's drive from the coast and the plantations. Like the spokes of a wheel, the old plantation boundaries run inland from the shore. When copra failed, the planters looked inland for the first time. Copra had to be shipped to market, but beef cattle could be driven down from the hills. Here, where tribal lands, French company land and privately owned land meet in an ill-defined collision of disputed boundaries, the men of Nagri Amel made a stand. They brought provisions from the coast, put up a shack, and painted a sign proclaiming the name of their party, where new members could join up as they did. They cleared the land, regardless of its ownership, planted it with subsistence and cash crops. Under their leader, Jimmy Stevens, they tore up the white surveyor's concrete stakes, which marked the limits of the white man's claims, and dumped them at what they considered to be the proper boundaries of Nagri Amel land. And Jimmy waited to talk to the white man's law.
We talk about Nagri Amel. We start, say we have some trouble with the land problem, what you call the land trouble, land. We got land it's taking out, and we see every time we try to talk to the, no matter if the Englishman, he won't listen. We talk to the Frenchman, he won't listen.
What do you say to him?
We said, you don't come more. Who sent you here? You come to our land. He said, sorry. Your land, you already been sold it for many years ago. We buy your land long time. You never been born yet. See, so they tell me some story like this. And we said, oh, this is all bull. We tell them this is not true. And they just don't listen. And if we talk too much, they take us to the government. And that's where the fight go now. You play on one side, you play on another side, and you got one there, or you don't know where you're going to end. Nobody want to listen. Nobody want to say they agree with this talk to make special limits. We try ask the British and French to make a limit, the boundary. The land must be under proper settlement, so everyone can join together, work together. We know which is the European mark. We don't mean on the Nagramel movement we want to push the European out. No, it's not that question. But we want everything must be in a proper way. See? But in the New Hebrides it's different. Every year or 3-4 years they can take another 100 hectares more. They can take more, but we can't take nothing out from them, see?
Why can they take it?
Because they have their own law, and they got the power. And we have empty hand, what we're going to do. And if we talk, maybe we miss some word, then first thing we must go to the jail. Well, 1 go, 2 go, we start to scared now, see? All right, maybe some fella can fight on talk. 1 time, 2 time in court, but 3 times he can't take it. If he take it too hard, he will go in for, see?
Have you been in jail?
Oh, good one. Yeah.
How long?
6 months.
What for?
Same thing, land trouble. They call, I was supposed to be a trespass against the law. It's a French claim. And I'm breaking the line through.
Just walking?
Walking. I tell the government, I said, only claim here, you only claim after the war. We know after this war, last war, you claim all this, the French claim. And your government is pushing the French more, you know, helping the people to go back to the promise. But American, they promise, when the war finished, the native come back. The thing which the American left for the people, inside the coconut, all the building, that's belong to the planter. But what American left outside in the bush, that's for the chief and his people. But when the American left, French claim everything, outside, inside, sea, everything, see?
But how did they claim it? Did they pay for it?
Pay nothing. They pay nothing. Pay who, sorry? Pay the native? No. They always say they've been paying long time the land. They said they're paying the land long time.
What did they pay long time ago? How much?
For true, we said it never give anything because us, we don't speak their own language. How we can prove, how they can prove, I don't know. How they can say they've been given something, we don't know. We know.
Do they have any paper, any document?
No. Maybe they make their own paper, but that's not to do with a native. Native before, white man come, give him 1 stick tobacco or something, and while native give them something, but that's not for the land, see, they always like to, same today. Today we like to help you, you help us, but we not said we give you the land.
So when they come before they give stick tobacco, what else do they give? Maybe guns, knives, this sort of thing?
Yeah, a gun behind. But long time, the story is they come with some tobacco and something, some mirror, some funny thing, mirror, I think, something. And something more, I don't know what, match, before no fire.
Mm.
And the match was a great thing, see? And the story was like this.
Nails?
Something like that, yeah. And by 2-3 times white man come, then they bring the gun, but that's long time behind.
So they give the native New Hebridean some tobacco, some nails, some mirrors,
something,
knives maybe, and he gives them the land and says, thank you very much, I take your white man, you take the land, is that right?
No, that's the story, but that's not the way. Native never said he gives something to...
How do you know he never said that?
Because we still falling out Tamata. Tamata never sell his land to anybody. Tamata, it's a mother. That's not Creamel. Tamata, it's a heart. It's our home.
The New Hebridean word tamata means a number of familiar ideas rolled into one. It means family and the feeling of kinship among your own people. It means patriotism and love of country. It means knowing what's right without having to be told. It means the legends of the past and hopes for the future. It means soul, which is difficult to define.
What is the future of Nagriamel, do you think? How do you see it developing in the years to come?
Well, to me, it's up to the, on one way speaking, it's up to the Picanini, up to the small one. All Nagriamel member today, or the movement today, try to claim the land and keep the land still waiting for the Picanini to come, and for the future, the place must go back for the black Picanini, go back to the dark-skinned Picanini.
The one issue which will rouse the ordinary New Hebridean to anger in the villages or the coastal towns is the threat of losing any more of their land to the white man. These islanders have a saying, the sea is our road, the land is our roof. There is so much sea in the West Pacific and so little land to shelter life that they had never thought of land as a divisible estate for buying and selling in lots. Land is to be used and passed on in trust for future generations forever. It is their soul, which is why they didn't want to lose any more of it. If a flint is taken from this riverbed, or a branch from a tree, taken away out of the New Hebrides, a piece of their soul is lost. That is how they see it. Not a point of view calculated to carry weight or title in a joint Anglo-French court. But it is theirs, like their social organization, which comes in for much mockery from the European. The banyan tree is their House of Commons and meeting place. If a white man or a stranger makes his way here, he is welcomed and given an honorable place, whereas the New Hebridean in his own land today has no rights as a citizen. Here, everything to do with village life is talked out. Marriage, pigs, vegetables, divorce. Everybody has not only a voice and a vote, but a veto. Decisions must be unanimous. Reaching them is often slow. But once taken, everybody makes up for lost time by implementing them. Without doubt, this tribal administration seems workable compared to the colonial compromise achieved by those masters of logic, the French, and the pragmatic British, back in 1906, in a rare moment of thoughtless cordiality. Above all, Nagriamel respects the rights of individuals.
How long have you been here?
7 years.
How many people you bring with you when you first come here?
37.
37 people?
Yes.
How many have you got now?
We got over 500 in the village all the time. But sometimes when we got to a meeting or something, we come to 1,000 something people. But today we got 500 here, man and woman.
Working?
Yes.
Working for Nagriamel is no sinecure. A man arrives or a family and they're given a house. Then he makes a contract to work for 5 years without pay. Money is short for medicines or stores from the town. Most of it comes from well-wishers. Even the bricks and mortar of Nagriamel are made here by hand. Many of the cash crops grown here, according to Jimmy, are boycotted in the coastal markets. Often they simply rot. 5 years is a long time.
Are there ever days when it seems so difficult that you feel perhaps it's not worth it, perhaps I'll give up this fight?
Oh, no. We won't give up. Give up, we already got, what, we got, what we say, all our right is nearly finished, and only small thing we have there, the Nagriamel. But the land is all, and we will not give up because we've been pushed back, and today we go back now, see? We give up where we're gonna go. We cannot, like we said, Tamata cannot leave us more. Tamata is working with the people today to go and get this thing back. And we ask for some more help, and if they give, we'll be pleased to join. But if they don't give, we will go inside and see what is wrong. See what is wrong. Something is wrong there. But we won't give up. I'm die, I'm stop, another one come. Another one come. Till the last man, they will go one by one till they must reach the promise.
To his followers, and to many New Hebrideans, Jimmy Stevens, also known as Jimmy Moses, appears as a prophet leading his people to the promised land. To others, he is merely a backwoods crackpot, a ragged-trousered troublemaker leading a Stone Age rabble to its inevitable doom. Down on the coast, the French, with their plans for investment, expansion in agriculture, beef export and tourism, and the British, with their tax haven and their colonial consciences to keep bright, depend on one factor: political stability. In the New Hebrides, political stability means simply this: that 80,000 people in over 80 islands, speaking some 200 languages, aren't likely to achieve political unity or significant power in the foreseeable future. To begin with, there are no newspapers in these islands. Perhaps this rickety rostrum is the nearest thing to a popular press, to a method of public communication, to making the voice of the people heard at all. Here, many New Hebrideans come from all over the islands, first to be entertained, and when the entertainment is over, Jimmy and his followers spread the word to any who will listen of Nagriamel, of peace and the law.
Thank you, blow you for all, got a friend back again. One time more blow you for one and talk, the behalf of Nagriamel, with them land problem blow you me, now with them all visit that way, can visit him you me long overseas.
Now, what about the future? What about the vote? What about the white man's law? What about the politics in Santa and Vila? How are you going to do anything about that? Are you just going to stay in the bush, or are you going to go down to the coast?
Well, we said we like all our thing must come back.
All of it?
Yeah.
Every bit?
Every bit. Must come back because that, like I said first, Tamata never sell out or never give out.
Do you think the white man is going to give it back to you?
Oh, if we don't give it, we take it somehow. We will take it.
How will you take it, Jimmy?
Many way. In many way. We said this way. We said in many way. If we wait for them to give it back, they never give it. And we must go for them. And we must go for them. We must go for them. But with work.
But they've got policemen, and they've got guns, and they've got Land Rovers, and they've got jails.
Yeah. We don't worry about this. This is on their side. Fine, by we got our policeman, we got our... We think of this, see? We think we will get our own jail. We got... If he do wrong, he go to the jail. If we do wrong, we...
The white man goes to the Nagrimel jail?
Yeah. We don't see it's a... Huh? No? What do you think? I think it's a fair by. Not today, but I think it's a...
What about guns?
Well, gun, we don't use any gun. We don't need gun here. We don't know. See, just now gun come, but we don't have any, thing. But we can use our own power to scare the white man. We can chase him. We got something. We can chase them.
Whether the white man is ultimately chased out or whether he goes quietly depends on two colonial governments. Since neither one can make separate statements or apparently find agreement together on New Hebridean independence, both remain speechless on the subject. Their silence is deafening. The possible tragedy of this political vacuum is that in time to come a real political pandemonium, as distinct from the present condominium, may well be let loose here one day.